Like you could, G.
Hello everyone, Pantoufleee here today for a new video called Top 10 Power Crept Tank. So for those of you who don't know what power creeping means, it's basically a tank that was good back in the days or even average and become completely worthless simply because now we have its counterparts that are doing a way better job and therefore making this tank useless on the battlefield. That's why today we're gonna see the top 10 of these tanks so you can avoid them as much as possible while grinding. The first one of the list is the VK4502A. This tank is on the list simply because if you compare it with its big brother, the Tiger II that received a huge buff a couple of updates ago, it really feels like this one is the great forgotten from the branch. When you compare the Tiger II and the VK4502A, you know the Tiger II is better. It has better armor, it has a better gun, and maybe the only thing the VK4502A still has for itself is the mobility, but for a heavy tank, and a lot of people are not gonna play it the regular playstyle, they are gonna struggle with it, simply because it's a tank made for medium side and not heavies, and as not a lot of people know that, everybody will struggle with the tank trying to make it an effective heavy, whereas it's simply a medium in disguise. The second one on the list is the IS-3, the Tier 8 Tech 3 heavy tank that leads to the IS-7. The main reason it's here is that it's simply the prototype of all the OP premiums Wargaming came up with. Back in the days when we only had the IS-3 Defender as the main big brother of the IS-3, it was not a problem to keep the IS-3 in your garage, simply because it was as effective as it was before. But now that Wargaming implemented IS-5, also the Object 252U and all these Russian Tier 8 heavy tanks, what's the point of having the IS-3? I mean, it's average in everything, whereas when you compare it with an Object 252U, it does everything but in a better way. The golden age of the IS-3 is over simply because now premiums are becoming way more overpowered than the regular Tech 3 IS-3. That's why I think Wargaming should try to maybe give it a little buff, especially on the side armor, to make it great again and able to side scrape like the king it was back in the days. Number 8, the T28. I literally hate that tank, and I think it's the case for most players in this game. The main reason is the lack of mobility and how easy it is to be circled with this tank. What's the point of playing this when you have the T28 Prototype and the T28 Defender? Literally none. The main problem I have with this tank is that even if your gun is one of the most impressive at tier 8, it still struggles a lot with the mobility and you're extremely team dependent. Why? Because if you go on the wrong side, you're gonna get destroyed because you can't come back, and if you go on the right side but you have a bad team, you're gonna get destroyed anyway without being able to bounce shots back, because unlike the T95, this tank is gonna be penetrated like butter as soon as people load gold shells, and that's the main reason I think Wargaming should improve the armor profile of this tank. Number 7, the SU-101. I know it's gonna amaze a lot of you that I put the tank in this list simply because the tank overall is good. You have a good gun, you have a really good mobility, and therefore it should be enough to make the tank competitive. And most of the time I agree with you, I feel like the SU-101 is really underrated, but what I hate about the tank, it's its lack of gun depression, which makes it literally unplayable as a tank destroyer if you want to play aggressively. It's quite hard, as you can see in this replay here, even if we got lucky that the KV5 bounced a lot. But the main problem I have with this tank is that it's supposed to be played in camping, I guess, because it's a tank destroyer and that's what Wargaming intend to do with the tank destroyer class. But when you try to play it aggressively, the lack of gun depression makes it really awful, and therefore, if you want to get your enemies, you gotta get closer, or at least on a flat terrain. The fact that this tank is extremely map dependent makes it a little bit annoying to me. Number 6, the KV3. This tank is on the list because as the IS got its armor severely buffed a couple of updates ago, it made the purpose of this tank literally worthless. Before, back in the days, the IS was the mobility tank, at least the mobility Russian heavy tank at tier 7, and the KV3 was the big armored one. Now, the IS combines both the armor and the gun and also the mobility, which makes this tank completely irrelevant, and you would rather get an IS than this one, which makes it literally power creep. Number 5, the Centurion 1. What I definitely hate about this tank is probably its low roll alpha damage. I know British tanks are supposed to have a really fast reload and therefore a low roll, but I hate that kind of playstyle, except on the Carnavan Action 10 because this tank is broken of course, but on regular Tech 3 tank, nah, it's definitely not for me. What I hate about this tank is that even if you're supposed to have a strong turret like it's the case on the Centurion 7-1, the tier 9, here it becomes completely irrelevant as soon as people try to shoot gold. Therefore with this tank you can side scrape because your armor on the side is bad, you can't really hold down because your turret armor is bad, and you can't frighten your enemies because your alpha damage is bad, even if your DPM is quite good. But if you only have the DPM for yourself, I don't think you're suitable for a good match, especially at tier 8. Number 4, the Shiri, the tier 7 Japanese medium tank. The main reason I think this tank definitely needs a buff, and a huge one, is its big size combined with its bad camo combined with its extremely light armor. It's not really suitable for the game in my opinion, especially at tier 7, because you're so big everybody's gonna spot you, and you're so lightly armored that everybody will penetrate you, which makes this tank bad. The only cool thing about the tank is probably its 3 shells type auto-loader gun, but is it enough to make you effective on the battlefield? I don't think so. You are big, you can't hide, you can't side scrape, you can't hold down. All you can do is playing as a support on the heavy side at least, and definitely not the mediums, because if they have a little armor on the turret and they go all down on you, it's literally over. Number 3, the Carnavan, the tier 8 British heavy tank. The main reason this tank is on the list is that the Carnavan Action 10, the premium version of the Carnavan, completely annihilates the Tech 3 one. It does everything the Carnavan Action does, but in a better way, therefore making it literally worthless to play nowadays for those of you who are owning a Carnavan Action 10. But even without the Carnavan Action 10, this one is pretty weak if we compare it to its counterpart at tier 8, especially among the tier 8 heavy community. The main problem I have with this tank is that your low alpha is so low that it's not gonna frighten anybody, but also your turret armor that is really not great. I mean, everybody will be able to penetrate you as long as they load gold. You have the side armor that is extremely weak, that doesn't allow you to side scrape. Nah, you can't do anything with this tank, and that's why it's on the list. Number 2, the ARL V39, the French tier 6 tank destroyer. To me, this is the worst tier 6 you can play with, simply because you literally have nothing with this tank. You reload way too long for a tank that does a low roll alpha. I mean, 310 alpha damage is still fine, but when you see that the Yak Panther can reload in 7, even 6 seconds sometimes, and you're reloading in 8, it's becoming worthless to play with this one. You also have no armor at all, which makes it really boring. Everybody will penetrate you from tier 5 to tier 7, so yeah, nah, you have nothing. I mean, a bad gun combined with a bad armor combined with an average mobility, it's the perfect recipe to make a tank literally worthless on the battlefield. I hate this tank, everybody hates it, even the Frenchies, so yeah, definitely a tank I put on the list, and I'm glad it's here. I just hope Wargaming is gonna do something about this huge cupola the tank has. And now for the top one of the tanks I hate the most, and I really think this one is power creep, the STA1, the tier 8 Japanese medium tank. Everything about this tank is awful. The armor, you don't have any, not even in the gun mantlet. The gun takes so long to reload for so low alpha damage that it's not even worth it firing your shots. Also the mobility, which is pretty bad and will not allow you to take advanced position at the beginning of any battles. I hate this tank. I literally hope Wargaming get rid of it, because even as a collectible tank I would still sell it, because this tank, just awful tank, let's say it like that. I hate that tank, and everybody should hate that tank. We should start a war against Wargaming, a religious one, to get rid of this. They get rid of the Churchill GC, so why not get rid of the STA right now? Because nobody wants to play that horrible thing. Alright guys, this video is now over. Feel free to subscribe, like and share if you enjoyed, and tell me in the comments your top 10 list of tanks you think are power creep in this game. I hope to see you soon in a new video or probably a new stream tonight at 9 PM. Thank you all for watching, see you soon.